Good, happy Friday. We are back with another Pay Practitioners panel on this Friday, May the 30th. And today I am excited to talk about something that has come up a lot over the past several weeks, months, years now, I think. I think it's highlighted even more this past couple of weeks because I spent some time at World at Work along with, I know, Dan, you were there. And one of the key themes that we noticed was, is AI going to take our jobs? And if not, what's it going to do to our jobs? I actually had an email from someone that follows the Pay Practitioners panel, and they had a nice list of questions saying, I've got 20 years left in my compensation career. Does compensation actually have 5 years left? So I thought it'd be a really fun conversation today to have around how do we see AI shaping the compensation space over the next several years? And do we think compensation folks are going to be relevant? My personal belief is that it's going to shift compensation from calculating to conversating. But I do want to kind of talk through that and understand what you guys think. So Dan, I know you were at the World at Work show this year. What did you take away from that in terms, especially of the AI moving into the space?
Well, one, every single vendor is the leader in AI. I will just tell you that because they've all told me that. That being said, I was mentioning the panel ahead of time. I just walked around and, for the people worrying about AI taking your job away, I walked around a lot of vendors and I just challenged their AI to be better than me. And we'll just suffice to say, many were not. They didn't know. They didn't provide the nuance. They didn't provide the details. But I found it fascinating because the biggest thing that I have an issue with our industry is, pay data and the way we use pay data. And I often challenge people in the survey industry with, do you really have all of the information? Because I've never seen a pay survey data set ever that shows a software engineer being paid $650,000 or $750,000 a year. Never. That being said, I know software engineers that make that much money, and they're never in the survey data because they're lopped off long before they create data. And so I spoke to one of the providers there and I just said, so you're saying you take the data that's out there like an aggregator and you make it easier to find the data because you're using AI. Yep. I went, do you fill in the blanks missing in the data? What do you mean? And I explained this concept. And they go, oh. I went, so I will be afraid of AI and I will be in love with AI when AI can look at all of the data. When it's smart enough to not look at what I gave it, but to look at what's available. So the closer you get to that, the more impressed I'll be. There are a couple of these firms that are out there looking beyond the box that we've lived in for 35 years. Yeah. But they are few and far between. So that's where I'll start, just on the pay data side alone. I mean, I can give you, this morning I did a prompt into ChatGPT to just say, hey, look, tell me how much a CMO at $1 billion company gets paid, which is how most people use it. And then I did a prompt saying, I have a company that needs to have an experienced CMO with 15 to 20 years of experience, at least 3 jobs in the technology industry. At least one of those jobs has driven at least $5 billion in revenue. The job itself will require at least 3 days a week working in Los Angeles at our offices there, and a few other details. The difference in pay was about 70%. Yeah. Because I know what to ask. And everybody that's on this call, everybody that's watching this live, you know what to ask. You will be replaced if you don't know what to ask. That's my starting point.
I do think that's a good point. Like we come with a level of experience where you know what questions to ask, right? AI is going to regurgitate what it's found or what it's learned, and but context matters. The ability to think through how do you apply compensation solutions to business problems matters. And I don't think AI is going to replace us as professionals. It's going to change our profession, certainly. It has already started doing that. And we're going to have to keep up and adapt to the changes. But I don't think it's going to replace us. So I'm interested to hear what James and James have to say.
Mr. King, after you.
Okay. So I think I meant to propose this earlier. I think we should, just so there's no confusion, call me Bearded James and call him Handsome James. I think that's the direction we should go with this.
Fair enough.
I think, kind of something Dan said. Right now, it's acting like an aggregator, and quite frankly, I think it's an aggregator with a new face, because this technology, what's been going on, has been going on for a while. There are companies that go out, they'll scrape the data, they'll bring it in. There are other companies that are just running. The reason why they have no gaps in their data is they're just running. I forget the term. Essentially, forecasting on the actual data, and that's why they have no gaps in their data. I think when you're talking about data, when you're talking about people like the survey providers and stuff like that, and obviously I'm a little biased. I work at Mercer, right? But I think there's still value in going to the source and getting that actual data. Rather than projecting it or scraping it, because you're still getting what's publicly available. You're not reaching out into the institution and speaking to actual professionals who are providing you that data. So I do still think that difference is going to continue to exist. And to Denise's point, I think being able to, how are you going to use that data? Can Gen AI give you ideas and starting points? Absolutely. It's really good at getting you over kind of what one author called the tyranny of the blank page, right? It's good at giving you a starting point. It's not good at finishing it. Not yet, at least. Could there be something on the horizon? Maybe. But I think right now, as far as the safety of comp jobs, I think they're still pretty safe. But I did hear someone saying, I think there's a bit of truth to it. AI is not going to replace your job, but the person who knows AI might. And I think there's some truth to that. I think you have to adapt with the technology that comes in, whether it's AI or anything else.
Yeah. No,
Handsome James, your turn.
You're too kind. Well, so we were talking about like market data, right? AI for market. I mean, AI could be used in all kinds of different ways to replace comp analysis, and I think, let's focus on the market data piece of it. You can go to ChatGPT and say, how much should I pay an X? And it comes up often with a pretty decent answer. But behind that, it's basically scraping data. It's aggregating, I think, like we've already talked about. Right. So it needs to scrape from something. So someone's got to do something somewhere to pull that data together. The biggest issue for me, like when, is if you go to ChatGPT and say, what should I pay this job? It's really, there's no defensibility about that. You can't explain. If someone else goes, and your employee comes back and says, well, I asked Claude, and it said this, and that number's bigger. Well, then where do you go from there? I mean, there's nothing. You've got no basis for conversation at that point. It's just two different random opinions with no sizable sources against it. So I think as a company, as a pay practitioner in a company, as a expert in a company, you need a methodology. You need a clearly defined methodology, and that's what the traditional survey providers provide. What I do think AI is going to do is going to bring down the price of all that, like the cost. And I think, Justin, you mentioned this early on or in an email or at some point we chatted about this. There's a very high cost associated with subscribing to survey providers. That's got to come down. Like, there needs to be much more automation and all of that in terms of like real-time connections to data and cleaning and smoothing that data and querying and providing submissions and all that kind of thing. So I'm with it. I don't think there's any immediate risk. And I think interpreting the data, communicating that data, being a voice for the data to the company, I think there's a very human role to all of that. I don't know about the rest of you. I found like my work has shifted a lot more to that communications piece as well, particularly as pay transparency is taken hold, making the numbers talk, because I was told once early on in my career is a big piece of it. So yeah, I don't know if that's an answer or not, but those are my thoughts.
Now I will point out really quickly, if anybody on this meeting is just an Excel grinder, if that's your job, is grinding through Excel spreadsheets, tactically, yeah, your job's going to get replaced. Might not get replaced this year. It's going to get replaced next year. So if that's your whole thing, is all you do is you take the data and you sort it back out, maybe create a composite of it and grind it back out and create different percentiles or align it with something, yeah, that job's going away. But that job's not going away in comp. That job's going away in everything.
Yeah.
So you got to think about what is a compensation professional. It's going to make people's first 3 years in comp much more challenging, because the stuff you used to get away with for your first 3 years while you got your feet wet, something's going to do it for you. So you're going to have to understand the strategy, the art, the components of pay beyond just percentiles really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, it's going to be a difficult leap into this as a profession, I think.
We still have to explain comp data. We still have to explain how to apply it to decision making related to reward programs. We still have to navigate exception cases and hot and evolving jobs, and how do you handle those? We still have to make sure that we're aligning reward strategy with workforce and business strategy. We still have to guide leaders in their decision making so that they're doing things equitably and it's ideally not biased, right? So there's still a lot of comp work that I think will need a person. I think it will ideally support us becoming more internal consultants for those people who are employees. And I think it will help us ideally deliver better outcomes and better data eventually. But right now it's still learning, right? It's still aggregating. And there's a lot of mediocre data sources out there yet, right? So it's not a solution that I trust 100%, and it still hallucinates. So,
and you just hit the nail on the head, Denise. What's the market acceptance, right? Like, right. And how fast will that be? Will the market say, "Well, I got this off of Chat GPT"? Okay, you got it off Chat GPT. I did the same thing, but I just added this in the prompt, and I got 70% difference, like Daniel was saying. Like, how willing is the market to accept that, and how quickly is it willing to accept it? Is another big question.
So a good place to start, James, I think a good place to start for everybody is go to your version, whatever version of AI you have, and say, I am of this. This is my job title. Tell me what my job is specifically and what I do each day and each week. I guarantee you what it gives you back is going to be pretty generic and not exactly what you do. I refer to AI, it's thought repeatership, not thought leadership.
Yeah.
Somebody before you thought up something, they published it somewhere, somebody in the AI world figured out a way to train their eye to know what that person knew, and that's now what you get to know. So great if that person was smart or right, but let's all be honest, we've met a lot of people in this industry that aren't smart and aren't right. And they're just out there publishing stuff too.
Yeah.
So AI is informed by dumb things just as much as it is smart.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine who's convinced. She's like, AI is not going to replace us. My God, there's so much mediocre, awful stuff published out there. For those of us who know what we're doing, we're going to be fine.
Who else thought Denise was going to go with, I have a friend out there that's really dumb?
Totally. I totally thought that was the direction she was going. I was like, wow, he does not pull punches. 100%. I was like, okay.
That's cold-hearted right there.
I have a former friend.
I mentioned you on LinkedIn Live earlier today, you dummy.
I consider Denise a friend. I was really worried. I was really worried there for a sec. Well, I want to say, so one of the things actually Justin said, I think before we hopped on, he said, and Justin, not to steer your thunder, I want to give you credit here. AI is pushing from calculations to conversations. And I think that's 100% correct. I think that is absolutely the direction it's going. The Excel workhorse, you're probably going to see that start fading away, which is great. That's great. We actually need to be in these higher level conversations. We can have the cost modeling in those pieces, and we can move into more of the strategic conversations. How do we do better for our employees in our organization? I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So if you're getting into this HR space and specifically in comp, so when I started, being good at Excel carried me for a good 5 years. Like that was very useful to me. But if someone was getting into that kind of role now, I'm not sure if I would say become an Excel guru. Like I think it's Dan's point, like it's not as useful as it once was. So the question for the group here, what would your advice be to someone getting into this kind of compensation analysis space, getting their foot in the ladder in the compensation function? What are the skills that people should be trying to hone at this point?
I would say storytelling.
I was going to say storytelling. Yeah, exactly.
100% storytelling. You have to, if your job is no longer to create the data, but to actually be able to understand and communicate the data. I mean, that's a level up. But that's something that I think that will separate you out from other people. If you can tell a good story with the data, understand the data quickly, understand what it is, and also importantly, what it is not saying, and be able to outline that for a client, I think that's huge.
I would say, while storytelling is huge, I think it is a skill set that comes after knowing what you're telling stories about. I would say people should lean into understanding organizational and corporate structures, the economic drivers and how those things impact staff and profitability. I think people need to understand the business from a people and a money side better. So compensation has a link and a purpose that will resonate to your CEO, your CFO, your CRO, your COO. It's not just your CHRO anymore. It's not we're doing compensation because we have to. We're paying people because we have to. There needs to be a better piece of that. And you can't tell the story if you don't know the playing field. And I think there are a lot of people in comp that don't yet understand, the differences in organizations, not just the difference between a not-for-profit and a for-profit, but business structures and why a company might be top-heavy or why it might not be top-heavy, and what the risks of not paying people well are, or the benefits of not paying people well are. All of that stuff, I would spend a lot of time reading more business journals, economic journals, Harvard Business Review articles on how companies are structured, than spending a lot of time learning how to do a better X lookup with a buried count if.
And industry knowledge, right? People who understand certain industries and the levers you pull to become profitable, and how to, what are those kind of things that private equity and VC, like, what do you think of yourself as an investor, and making sure that you define your contributions as a compensation leader, not just as a reward professional, but as a business consultant who happens to know a good deal about rewards and how to pull that lever to drive cultural change or performance. It's not just about the calcs and the data. It's about how you wrap it up in a nice, neat, tidy package to help business leaders drive the outcomes they want to drive.
And I promise this is not a plug. Oh, go ahead, James.
Go ahead, James.
Okay, just real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you. So I think, based on what Dan Denise was saying, this is one of the reasons why I promise it's not a plug. This is one of the reasons why sales comp is so interesting to me, because I think it's a bridge to everything y'all were just talking about. You can advise people on sales compensation if you don't understand how they make money. Exactly. If you don't understand how the business works, if you don't understand some of the problems, some of the general business problems, you don't understand that, you can't advise them, right? And I think that's a great bridge to that future understanding we're talking about. So
that's true. All incentive comp. Incentive comp is the business link to pay.
I do that to a certain extent, but I think with sales, it's more highlighted because you're actually going into how the revenue streams are created. Whereas with like an AIP plan, you're talking about incentives, but your line of sight can be very far. because I can be an accountant on an AIP plan and have certain KPIs and things like that, but it's not directly impacting that number. It's more indirectly impacting it. And I would say with sales comp, you're directly impacting that revenue stream. And I think it might be a little bit closer.
I would agree. It is one of the reasons I love doing sales comp.
But it's I'm just trying to think then. So I really love this discussion because we're saying that we need to be better speakers, better communicators. We need to be more business savvy. Probably need to be more politically savvy across the business as well. So is it fair to say that the comp manager or the pay practitioner of the future, let's say in 5 years versus 5 years ago, it's going to be probably fewer, more highly skilled people? It feels like, because if you want the skill set we've just been describing, you're talking about more experience, more qualifications, maybe a master's, maybe an accounting or law qualification, at least a undergraduate of some kind, something more business oriented. But those are more expensive people as well.
True.
And generally speaking, these cost functions are getting trimmed down with the replacement of AI tools and things. So again, I'm going to come back to this idea, like if you're in this profession, if you're getting into compensation in HR, you kind of need to start positioning yourself now to be a high value role and adopt those kinds of skills and demonstrate those kinds of skills and prepare for the fact that, but I could do a really good X lookup is probably not going to save your job at some point, right? Because that kind of level. So I just think it is interesting. I think we do. I find that comp and HR is generally a little bit slower paced in terms of the rate of change as sort of tech comes in, but at the same time, that rate of change is accelerating in every function. And if anyone's read them, the singularity is near, but the rate of technological change is accelerating. What we do in the next year is going to be more than what we did in the last 3 years. It's kind of exponential in that sense. So I think, that's kind of where I'm getting to this. I think, you've got to, anyone in this profession has got to start preparing themselves to be a slightly different kind of role.
Yeah. And James, one thing.
Go ahead.
So James, one thing I'd like to add on to that too is to your initial question is, how do we prepare for the next 5 years? I think, the comp people, I'm going to blend both James's statements together, is you need to know AI to be able to do comp and when to leverage that. I think when we look at, telling stories with data, AI can actually help you do that quite a bit. We just ran a survey of about 500 companies, loaded some of the data into our LLM and said, what are the themes that you see, coursing through the results here? And it gives a lot of interesting pieces of information that generally I would have done with Tableau through filters and dynamic filtering. But what's really nice about that and really interesting I found is asking AI, hey, do we find greater enthusiasm? What does the greater enthusiasm across leadership mean for the adoption of AI tools? It actually is able to analyze that data and come back with fairly succinct and accurate kind of descriptions around that data. So I think in addition to knowing the business, I think AI is one of those tools that is going to be like the next Excel that we're going to have to be really comfortable using to better our skill sets and our knowledge.
So when I see an email with typos in it, like a long email with typos in it, I kind of judge the person for not using AI at this point. Like, why wouldn't you just put it through ChatGPT, clean it up, make it more succinct, make it more short, give it a summary at the top? I look at some of those things, I think, why didn't you just use AI for that? It'd make it easier for everyone, and it would have been quicker for you.
Also not allowed to use AI. Technically, for business purposes, I cannot currently use AI.
Really?
Yes.
Wait, don't you run your own business?
No, I work at Alliant Insurance Services, and as an insurance company, they are very risk averse, and so. And there are a lot. I've talked to a lot of people that are in this space right now that are sort of going, "Yeah, we're waiting," but I think I'll just. I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but maybe everybody here should go look at the recent article about Workday, and we'll just leave it at that. Those of you who know. Those of you who don't know probably should go look it up. But I will say, one of the things that both Jameses were talking about is, we need to be better. It's going to be a more professional role. It's going to be a more skilled senior role. What it's not going to be is an easy entry level role. And I'm going to make this prediction. I like doing predictions 5 to 10 years into the future, largely because if I'm right, I look really smart. And if I'm wrong, nobody remembers I made the prediction. But what you don't see at universities today are compensation degrees. But I do think you will start seeing compensation programs rolled out at colleges and universities so people can actually have the skill sets they need to be what the new entry-level comp person is 5 years from now, which is somebody that already knows percentiles, already knows base pay mechanics, already knows the concepts behind incentive plans. And it's somebody that can immediately jump in at what we might consider a third tier up comp person right now. I don't think we're going to get a lot of true junior comp analysts or comp analysts 5 years from now.
Yeah. You're probably not going to have those P1, P2s in this function. It's just not going to be a starting point, is it?
Right. So it's either going to become a bigger part of HR degrees, or it's going to become some kind of specialization within HR at the scholastic level, not at the now I got a job and my HR person just said, hey, can you take over comp for me?
So I am curious if we can kind of pull on that string a little bit more. Where would this new level position, where does this fit in career pathing? Like, I think you're kind of hitting on it there.
Here's my prediction. I think we're going to get in performance management and performance feedback. We're going to start. We already are starting to see the switch where it's not just articulating feedback to employees about their behavior, but it's how are they utilizing tech? How are they utilizing AI? How are they using that to magnify and create faster outcomes, better outcomes, and their impact and ability to help others do the same thing, right? I think, what was the company that just combined technology and HR? Did you see
Moderna.
that? Right. Like,
Moderna?
that is a sign of the times, right? Like, it's not just people delivering outcomes and performing their jobs well. It's how do you utilize tech in the performance of your job? And AI's, changing the playing field. It's going to be part of performance management.
And again, we'll find out where comp really fits. I think when people start putting together curriculum and we start finding out, is comp part of finance? Is comp part of HR? Is it part of IT? Is it part of corporate performance management? I mean, it's kind of all of them.
I think we should be teaching comp in college. I just put a post out in comments on LinkedIn about that. It is economics. It is behavioral economics. It is psychology. It is a combination and a multidisciplined area of expertise. And it's not just finance. It includes aspects of finance. And you don't know that when you first walk into the profession most of the time. But once you've been in it for a few decades, that's what you're doing. You're taking a compilation of a lot of disciplines in order to influence and change and drive outcomes.
Somebody on LinkedIn said, this is all very good advice we've been given for years. AI is forcing us to take more seriously and to do so quickly. If you're paying attention, then this won't be a stretch.
It's kind of like pay transparency and the pay equity laws that are going in place. We got those because we weren't doing it consistently across employers and across geographies. We are being pushed because of legal compliance into that space. AI is pushing us into utilizing tech and shifting our approach to getting work done. And that's not going to stop. So for people who are resistant to change and are not willing to adapt, they're going to struggle, right? I think one of the biggest things I'd interview for if I was filling a comp position right now is not just the ability to use technology, it would be the ability to communicate. And I would ask for real world use cases of how do you utilize AI in your day-to-day work. And I would look for people who can give me examples of their adaptability and flexibility and a willingness to change, and not just be comfortable with the old way of doing things.
Yeah, well, again, the people at the front edge of this are usually the people at the front edge of everything. And
Yeah.
for everybody that says, but we've never done it that way before, I will bluntly say, that's fine, but somebody else will do it that way.
Yep.
So you will get replaced by the person who will do it that way.
Isn't that what the CEO of Blockbuster said? I'm trying to remember. Isn't it? It sounds really familiar.
I literally was just in Bend, Oregon, literally 3 days ago, and we almost stopped at the last.
Is it still there?
It's still there.
Yeah, I remember seeing
We
a
were
documentary on it.
actually shocked.
Yeah.
So my son's like, "What's a DVD player?" I'm like, "Oh, you literally don't even understand the concept of Blockbuster, much less the fact they don't exist anymore." But that's the thing. Change is gonna happen. You know, it's gonna happen. The question is whether or not you're going to embrace it, use it, and use it intelligently. I was saying earlier, I said right now AI is sort of like giving a toddler a chef's knife. There's a chance nothing bad happens. There's also a chance that your kid accidentally kills you or the dog. And you got to go, hey, wait a minute. Maybe take a step back. I will also tell you, I can show you, I'll post it on LinkedIn later today. But I can tell you, and anybody that's used AI a lot will know this. AI is sycophantic. AI is like that employee that works for you that wants to make you happy.
Yeah.
It will try very hard to give you what you want. So much so that it will give you what you want, even if it's wrong. Even if it's wrong. And that's the part you need to say, no. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what I'm supposed to be asking you. Tell me what you don't know. And any system that has AI built in that doesn't allow you to put that kind of clarity into it, where the AI is just operating on its own, AI doesn't operate on its own. It only operates with your instruction or somebody else's programmed instructions. So it can only do what it's told to do, and anything you don't tell it to do, it'll fill in the blanks, but crazily. And what I'll post on LinkedIn later, I just did a presentation on AI, a Disrupt HR presentation, 5 minutes, cloud of dust. But the last slide is a actual picture that DALL-E did. I took a photo of myself and I said, convert this to match the presentation. 5 times. The best of them, I look like a 30-year-old soap opera star from the 1990s. The best of them. My mom, and I'm not joking, my mom, who's in a skilled nursing facility, they had to come give her oxygen because she was laughing so hard. It's that bad. But AI was very proud of itself. I think this looks like you in your imagination. I'm like, in no one's imagination, even my wife's imagination, I've never looked like this. So thanks, but it really wants to make you happy. And
that's why you get some weird comp answers, right, Dan? Like when you're asking about what I should be paid, and you've got something that's telling you, that's trying to make you happy, and you'll say, "Is that really high enough?" But I'm doing this, and they it goes a little bit higher. Look at that. What's
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I can find a better match.
You basically get AI to tell you whatever you want.
Than you've ever worked with.
Yeah.
Well, how much do you want to get paid?
Yeah.
How about $1 million? You know what? I can find a place to make you $1 million.
One of the things I find very interesting around, we're talking about like the replacement of survey data with AI data. When we ran this question in our AI, how are you adopting AI? How are you using it in your organization? When we asked the question, in the next 12 months, how likely are you to use AI technologies instead of salary surveys? In other words, how likely are you to say, how much should I pay an accountant in Boise, Ohio? 1% said they're doing it now, which, okay, that's fine. There's 4 people that are doing that today. Makes sense. But what I thought was a little more surprising was 10% said they expect to be doing that in the next 12 months. So we're going to start to see this big movement into, that's 10 times as many people plan to do that in the next 12 months as are doing it today. And I'm wondering too, have you guys, Dan, I know you were at the conference, I know everyone else is, in the space kind of seeing what's happening with AI. Are there things that we think it's doing well? What do we think it's actually going to replace? Because I mean, 1 out of 10, 90% are still going to be using surveys. I don't think it's going to replace surveys.
No.
I know it's replacing the market matching process. But what do we think it will replace and be good at replacing?
I would make a distinction between replace and enhance, because I think there are a lot of things that can enhance. I don't know how much, and this is not a cop out on the answer. I genuinely don't know how much it's actually going to wholesale replace. But I would say you just mentioned, Justin, the matching job descriptions, things like that. I think it's going to enhance those. I still think you're going to want a professional to take a look at those to make sure, yeah, this makes sense. You're not just trying to Dan's point, not just trying to make me happy, like, oh, this is what I want to hear. But I think those pieces, again, getting back to kind of the Excel grinders, JD creation and matching some of those early career tasks, I think it's going to enhance those more than replace them right now. But I'd say that's probably the starting point. But I'd be curious to know what other people think.
So I have some ideas on what it can actually replace. I think it's going to replace, and it can do this now used correctly. It can replace things like show me trends in X, show me anomalies in Y, show me inconsistencies in this. Give me an idea from a pay equity standpoint. If I gave you these pieces of information, you should be able to quickly spit out, are females in these age ranges with these tenures paid different than males in these same age ranges with these same tenures? With that stuff, it can do pretty well right now. If you give it the right instructions and you have the right data, it can do that pretty well. What it can also do right now is it replaces the person that doesn't work in your department. So one of the things a lot of comp professionals are dealing with right now is thin departments, 1 or 2 people. AI can be a really good peer reviewer. Hey, I did all of this. Is anything I did in these calculations, does it just seem wildly off?
Mm-hmm.
It can do that, and it could do that pretty well, and it can certainly do it better than no one. So if you're a singleton working at a company by yourself, Justin talks about the fact that at one point he was the everybody in comp. And when you're everybody in comp, having a bunch of people that have been in comp before you in a computer that can just look at your stuff and give you an idea, huge. So I think that stuff it can do well. I think it's going to be good for if what you're looking for is market data from very recent trends, because it can go out, and AI is getting better and better at going out and getting real-time data. And that'll all happen by the end of this year. Real-time data will be a reality. And yeah, we don't necessarily want to price a job off a semi-wrong match on Glassdoor or whatever. But it can certainly tell you when somebody comes in and says, my people are saying they're paid 20% below market. It can give you 5 seconds. You can figure out, are they lying or not? Or are they looking at the wrong thing? So that, I think all those things it can do, and it can do right now. It's also going to immediately replace a lot of the extensive Excel formulaic grinding stuff, and it can do that right now. Some of the systems out there right now can do that better than most of the people in this industry can. But again, it all starts with, do you have the right data and did you give it the right instructions? Because it doesn't know. It does not know if your data is good, and it does not know if you're providing it good instructions. It just blindly does what you tell it.
One of the thinking of that peer reviewer, when we were World at Work, I was having a conversation with someone. They do incentive plan design, and one of the things that they use is they develop their plans, load it in ChatGPT or one of the other tools that are out there, and they say, if I was a salesperson, how would I game this system to be most advantageous to me?
Oh.
And that's how they're using it to design better and more holistic incentive plans.
I just ask good sales.
Well, that's so there's actually something. So there are companies out there that will actually provide a spiff to veteran sellers to look at a sales plan and say, okay, how do you make money off this? So I think that's a really intelligent use of it. That makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah. Having it help you find unintended consequences is good. I use AI all the time to write policy, to write competency definitions, to write posts. I write job descriptions, all sorts of things I use AI for. I will say I'm probably less willing and don't want to, I'm cautious about not uploading confidential data into an AI tool, right? Because I don't want anything that is confidential to be used in these public AI platforms. But I do think, much like Justin, I've seen you utilize AI as your roadmap within the software tools that you produce. I think it is changing the game. What I do wonder, though, is we find, I think the baseline that we all experienced when we came out of college and learned how to do compensation work, we worked on in Excel spreadsheets, learned people who don't know how to age data. So I'll give you an example. You can put how to age data in software now. But I've had to show people how do you do it in Excel because they don't understand the logic behind it. So I do wonder if some of the basics that we know, having done this for years and having grown up in a different time, is going to be lost because it's all pre-done within software or AI, right? So how is that going to help people have confidence with explaining some of the things that we need to explain if they aren't learning some of those nuts and bolts of what we do?
Yeah. I will say I'm old. And it's important I say that I'm old because, I have a team of people that are not as old. And occasionally I'll bring up things like that were indispensable within my career, not within my life, just within my career, like a 10 key with a tape on it.
Right.
And I have multiple people on my team that are like, what? I went, yeah, you'd have two people, they'd add up the same information, you'd run the tape, and then you'd check to see if their totals match. And if they didn't, then you'd go back and audit that, and that's how you figure out that the audit was done. And that was an absolute essential skill that you had to have. And if you didn't know how to do it, and when people said, oh, when this goes away, Excel is going to come in, and no one's going to know whether or not we can find how we'll find errors. Yeah, we do. We know how to find errors now. It's just a thing. And that's part of this thing is we have to go, all right, how do we use AI to do what we do better? It's less about what it's going to replace. As James King was saying, it's what's it going to enhance?
Yeah.
How do we use it to make ourselves better? And the reality is, if you're a compensation professional, you're the only person that knows what the baseline for better is. So if you let somebody take your job using just AI, it's because you weren't very good at explaining why the hell you had a job. No offense to anybody here, but if you can't explain why you should be working, AI should replace you. I know, I'm mean.
You're so uplifting, Dan. Like really, you're the team.
Figure out why you do your job. Like everybody here should know why they do a job and why they're important. And it's not your Excel skills. It's not.
No.
It's great that you have them, but it's not your Excel skills any more than it was the fact that I used to be able to do a 10 key without looking at it and just watching things. And I used to work in a room with a bunch of people that are all running at the same time. That sound still is very clear in my head of everybody running 10 keys at the same time. No one today knows what that sound is, and no one misses it. That's AI for us in the future.
Well, I love that. And I think we've got about 10 minutes left. And I think I like Ashley's question. And I think that's maybe a good way for us to kind of start to kind of wrap things up with. But what recommendations do you have for comp professionals interested in getting more savvy with AI? What resources do you recommend? So we did ask a question like this in our survey, like what are people using? And to be honest, it wasn't surprising. ChatGPT held the lion's share, followed by Claude, followed by Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, and others have developed internal tools that all the information remains safe and within the confines of their organization. So one of the places I would recommend starting with is taking a look at the different platforms out there, but of course not loading the data. So maybe checking with your IT department to understand, what tools do we have available to us that we can use. There may be internal tools. But I think for myself personally, one of the things that I have found it to be really helpful with is just continue to ask it questions and continue to kind of push limits to find out what it can and can't do well. So that natural curiosity of just, well, can it do this? Can it do this? Can it do this? With the data that you have that's not private or personal or would break any compliance issues that you have at your organization, load those into an AI or an LLM and find out what it can tell you, and use that natural curiosity to kind of find out what else can it tell you and what can it tell you that's wrong, or what does it tell you that is incorrect, that you need to kind of know where those boundaries lie. That would be my first recommendation. I don't know if others have thoughts on tools or ways they're using it.
Yeah, play with them would be mine. Yeah, I think kind of the same vein, right? Just have a go, try it out. Like I keep finding new ways to use AI. Just by kind of asking it, like some people in the comments mentioned, just ask ChatGPT what it can do. Like tell them what you're trying to do. Say, is there a better way to do it? There are things that I've been doing, like ways that I've been putting files and job architecture together and things. And sometimes I just quiz AI and say, hey, I'm doing this, this, and this. Does that make sense? Or can you think of another way to do it? Like, is there a quick way to do this? And sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes it suggests a shortcut. Sometimes it just says, basically do the same thing. But you don't know what you don't know. So you can get so ingrained in muscle memory in the way that we do our jobs that sometimes you forget to think that maybe there's a quicker, more efficient way to do that. And ChatGPT itself is a great way to just have a chat and say, well, is there a better way I can do this?
I agree. I created a custom GPT on ChatGPT and pointed it to comp resources that I trust. And then it gives me a lot of great things. And I challenge myself not to use, say, Google as a search engine, and I use ChatGPT instead. I like Copilot, I like Claude, and I play with lots of different ones. I've got a video AI tool that I use called Render Forest that I'm utilizing to build a YouTube channel. So there's just play with it. Just start experimenting and be comfortable with not knowing.
James, before I start blathering, did you have anything you want to add? Because I do have some things I'll add.
I figured you did, and I'm awaiting it with bated breath.
We're waiting, Dan. Go ahead.
So let's start with AI is not GPTs and LLMs.
Right.
ChatGPTs and LLMs are AI the way a smorgasbord is a nice restaurant. It's like everything's there, but it's not really great. Nothing is fantastic. It's fine. I'm not going to name any smorgasbord restaurants or buffet restaurants. But they have macaroni and cheese and pizza and chicken and somehow some Chinese food. And also over here, some food that looks like it could be, I don't know, Thai fusion. But you'll get better of all of those foods at actual restaurants that make those foods. So let's start with that. If you're asking ChatGPT to do things, it is the easiest, most accessible, or Claude or Copilot, any of those big GPTs, LLMs. They're all great, but they are sort of catch-alls. They're a mulligatawny stew, if you will. If you don't know what that is, it's delicious, but it also different every time somebody makes it. But AI is really going to be about specific, targeted, incredible little tools linked to other little tools, linked to other little tools. So first of all, learn what AI is. Second, I mentioned earlier in this thing that I did a presentation on AI in HR and comp. And I focused because I don't know if you've ever been to a Disrupt HR presentation, they're 5 minutes long. And I focused it purely on the fact that AI is currently the world's best management training tool. And the reason it's a great management training tool is AI will literally and only do specifically what you ask it to do and what it understands, which, as it turns out, is exactly what your staff will do. They will do what you ask them to do and what they understand. So start using ChatGPT to figure out if you even know what the hell you're doing by asking it to do things. And then saying, can you provide do you need more clarification? Yeah. Can you give me this answer as if you're somebody that's done this in this industry for 10 years? So ask it to help you, but then take the time to critically look at what it's giving you. And I will tell you 80% of the time, its inability to give you a good answer is based on your inability to give it a good question, a good prompt.
Yep.
And you will find that if you want to start anywhere in AI, that's where I would start. I don't care what tool you're using. They're all fairly similar from that perspective. It's really about knowing what AI means. At one point, good-looking James mentioned the singularity. The singularity is just when AI will be as smart as us. And it's not. We're 5, 6, 8 years away, depending on who you talk to. But I remember when it was 30 years away, and it was 25 years ago that it was 30 years away. They have not been wrong about the progression of AI. So 5 years from now, the stuff you can think, AI will still be able to think. But guess what? It won't be able to think it without good instructions, without understanding, without clarification. So this is where I would start if I were you. Start asking it questions and seeing if you're good enough at asking questions to get AI to do what you need it to do. Because until you are, it's a dangerous, dangerous tool. It's a toddler with a chef knife.
Yeah, and James with the beard, you posted something in the chat that I think is important, and I think it also kind of highlights one of the things that we found in the survey that we ran. So we kind of asked folks, what are you using it for? And people had mentioned they're using it to write, emails. They're using it to develop job descriptions, things that are kind of low stakes, things that can be changed pretty easily. But people are much less likely to be using it to find out what is the market value of a job. They're not using it to write plan documents, which I was a little bit surprised about. But those are things that are higher stakes. But James, the what you shared was a quote from Sam Altman: ChatGPT is incredibly limited, but good enough at some things to create a misleading impression of greatness. It's a mistake to be relying on it for anything important right now. I think that's a great kind of quote to wrap things up with, but I think it'll be interesting to come back a year from now and see if that statement has changed. But no, again, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you guys for sharing your wisdom and your expertise. I look forward to the next Pay Practitioners panel 2 weeks from today with the same group and the same time. So again, thank you guys so much for taking the time today and sharing your wisdom. We will chat again in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody.